Okay, in previous video we talked about how we can use the props and transforms.conf to ingest, to basically convert the events to matrices data points and index it, right? And this operation was during the index time operation. Now in that video, if you remember, I talked about like we can do the same stuff in the search time as well. Okay, now for that we need this mcollect command, so which we'll be discussing today. Okay, so mcollect command, basically it converts the events into metric data during search time, and then it put into a metric index over there. Okay, now to use this command you need to have this role called run_mcollect. If you see it over here, so that capability you need it. And syntax wise it is very simple. So you this is the mcollect command, if you see, and it only the one argument is necessary over here is called index. Okay, and there are a lot of optional argument over here which we will be discussing one by one. Okay, so before, okay, let us first try to understand the different arguments and how it works, then maybe we will talk about other issues over there. Okay, so first we will start with the split. Okay, and then we will move accordingly. Now as I said, index is the mandatory argument over here and split is one argument. If you see it over here, the default value is false, and if you set it true, it basically determines how mcollect identifies the measures of an event. So if I just go down over here, like how the split argument works. Okay, now when split equals to false, which is basically the default one as well, in your search basically you need to give certain field names in certain way. Okay, so that means if you, it may happen that in your event you have single metric data point, okay, or you can have multiple metric data point over there. Now the file today we'll be using it, this one, the same file data_new, which we have used in the previous video. Okay, and if you see in our events, as we have seen in previous video, we have two different kinds of groups over here, right? And these two kinds of event has multiple metric data point, like the current size kb, current size. That means from a single event we are basically extracting, we are going to basically extract the multiple metric data point over here, right? So if I just go back to the documentation again, so when split equals to false and your metric having a single metric data point, then the field name you have to create is called metric_name and _value. Okay, so if you can extract or create this particular field, okay, then and this particular field as well, which basically holds the measurement of this particular metric, then the mcollect command will be able to extract that metric name and the value from your event and put into a metric index over there. Okay, but if you have multiple metric data point in your event, in that case your field names needs to be metric_name, then colon the actual name of the metric and the numeric value of the metric over here. Okay, that is how it needs to be. So that means the same data, if you see it over here, I just index into my main index with the source type test over here. Okay, we have this 6 events over here. Now to use the mcollect when the split equals to false, so the command will be something like mcollect, okay, then index equals to, I just created a simple metric index called test metrics idx. Okay, but if you just run this one, it won't be able to put any kind of metric data over there, because the event name will not be in the same structure as we discussed over here. So that means whatever metric you want to basically extract, the field names has to be something like this one. Okay, so for that only what I have done is, if I just go to my queries, I have done something like this one. So if I just copy it, just a simple if else statement. I will just explain this one. So if I just put it over here, okay, before the mcollect, okay, I have to remove this one. Okay, so what I am doing it over here, I am following the same structure, metric underscore name, this string is as is, okay, we have to put then a colon, then for the event, so let's say first we will just ingest the pipe, the group equals to pipeline, those three event metrics, okay, so that we will understand how it works over there. Let's say group equals to pipeline, I will say, okay, only this three events we are going to fetch it from here. Okay, now this is how for the pipeline events we have CPU seconds, executes, and other. Okay, 1 minute. Let me just filter that three events first. Okay. Now if you see, we have CPU seconds, executes, and cumulative hits. These three metric data point we are having it over here, right? So that is how I have created over here as well. So you can give a name over here, something like pipeline dot CPU seconds. So this will become your metric name. You can give any name over here, okay, and what will be its value? Its value will be the value of this CPU underscore seconds field name. As CPU underscore second is getting extracted, that's why I'm able to do it over here. That means you need to make sure that this particular field is getting extracted over here. Otherwise you won't be able to assign its value over there to this metric name. Similarly, I did for the pipeline dot executes, that means for this executes field, and the pipeline dot cumulative hits over here. Okay, so this three stuff is required because the split of it and the default value is false over here. Okay, we will see when we have split equals to true, but before that just let us try to run this one and see how it's working. So if I just run this one, so it will still send you this three events, but when you see the job, if you see 9 metric data point emitted to index this particular index. Okay, now if I just run a simple mstats command on that particular index, okay, I just given a span of 1 day over here by the metric name. Just wanted to see what are the different metric it has extracted over here. I will be discussing the mstat command very thoroughly in future videos. Okay, that's why I'm just not concentrating much on this mstat syntaxes over here. So if you see, it has extracted three metric names, right? As we expected over there, pipeline CPU seconds, cumulative hits, and executes over here. Okay, and the counts as well, because we have total 3 events over there, right? So that's why it is counting as 3, because from each and every event it is basically extracted this particular metric over here. Now in this particular approach, there is one drawbacks over here. If I just show you the dimensions, it will be more clearer. I'll just say this one. If I just copy this mcollect command over here, don't worry about this mcollect command as well, which I will be discussing in future videos. Value of dims. Okay, if I just run this one for all time, okay, and if you see it over here, it has basically taken all the fields belongs to that particular event as its dimensions, including the metric name over here. If you see CPU seconds, cumulative hits, executes, all of this, right? Because these three things are actually the metrics we are basically planning to extract it, right? It is extracting the metrics as pipeline.cpu seconds, but it has also make this CPU seconds, cumulative hits, and executes as a dimensions value as well, which is not desirable at all, right? Because ideally the fields which is not having any numeric value, that should belongs to our dimension, right? That means our group, name, processor, these fields, right? So we saw one drawback of this approach where we are just having a split equals to false, and then we are just mentioning the index name, and we are creating the fields which will be extracted as a metric by this kind of structure over here, right? Now let us try to see first how the split equals to true will work. Okay, so the input is split equals to true. Okay, in this case, what you need to mention is you need to mention the field names which are basically part of your dimensions. That's all. The other fields, including all the numeric fields available for this particular event, will be extracted as a metric value over there. Okay, so we do not need to create this kind of field names in those cases. Okay, so when split equals to true, as I said, we need to provide the dimensions name. So I'll just provide this group, location, corporation, and name. Now let us try to do it for group equals to Q this time. Okay, other set of events over here. So as I told, if I just show you over here, so we have 6 events, right? 3 events belongs to if I just go this side, 3 events belongs to pipeline, which we ingested in using the split equals to false. Now we will ingest the queue so that we can able to distinguish between these two. Okay, so we will just make this one, and as I said, when split equals to true, we will just give the dimensions we wanted to use for our matrix, which is nothing but this group, location, corp, and name, right? If you see for group equals to Q, we have non-numeric fields are group, location, corp, and name. So that is what I am giving it over here. And also you need to make sure these fields are getting extracted over here as well. That means it should appear in the interesting field as well over here. Okay, so if I just run this guy now, even in the job, if you see, there are 42 matrices it has extracted, because for each and every event we have a lot of matrices over here. Now if I just run this one now, mstats command, if you see, it has extracted for, if you see this 3 we extracted before, right? This pipeline.cpu seconds, cumulative hits, and all. Now other matrices it has extracted as well. Okay, now the one which is does not have this pipeline dot, these are extracted by the recent query we are having it. But if you see, one drawback again of this particular approach is it is also extracting this date hour, date mday, date minutes, which are basically fields which are getting extracted when you have some kind, when you have ingest in any of your events. Basically for all the Splunk events, Splunk by default generate this data points over there, right? So this is also getting extracted as a metric value over there, which is again not desired in this case, right? Now if I just see the dimensions over there, maybe the dimensions, it will be perfect over there, because we did not given the metric names over there. But if we just give the metric name over there, the dimensions are perfect over here, but it has also extracted some more metric data point, which is ideally should not be extract at all, right? And also it has another drawback, like it is not getting this pipeline dot, right? So for Q event we want something like Q dot current size kb in that way, right? So it is not doing something like that one as well. So let us try to fix that one. Now to fix this issue where it is getting, these guys are getting extracted, okay? So as a metric, what we'll do, we will just take those fields which we want, right? So for that, what we'll do is, for using the fields command, we will just take those fields which we want from the search query. If you see, because it is a search time operation, so that means whatever the field we are extracting over here, it will only work on those particular fields over here. Okay, so now that issue is fine. Now how to prefix that metric name with q dot something? So for that, so there is a entry called prefix field. Okay, so prefix field, you need to give a field name over here. Okay, so we want to put q, right? So that is the value of the group field, so that is what we will be giving it over here, called group. Okay, and the group field is also getting extract over here as well, as we only filtered the q events. That's why the value of the group is currently only 1. Okay, but if you just remove this one, so value of the group field will be the q and the pipeline as well. Okay, now before I run this particular one, I just wanted to clear this particular test matrix index so that we will see how the difference it is making when we are running it. Okay, now as we cannot basically delete matrices from the text matrix event directly, there are some other ways to do it, but there is no shortcut way to do it. So that's what I'll do is I will just remove this, basically delete this particular index and just recreate it. Okay, so I'll just do it quickly. So I just recreated that index. So if I just run the command now, so there is no metric in that particular index now. So now let us try to run this particular search with this split equals to true and the prefix field equals to group and the list of fields which we want to fix those issues over there, right? So it is we are able to run it. It is able to, if you see last time it has put 42 matrices over there, right? Now it is actually extracting the 15 matrices. So it did not extract those date time, date hour, those field values. Just to identify how it works, if you see, it is extracting something like this one. Now one issue still I have seen over here. According to the Splunk document, ideally it should be creating a metric name called q dot something, but I don't know whether it is a bug or something, but it is not creating the dot over here. Okay, maybe try from your end as well and see like whether you are getting the similar behavior or not. Okay, but apart from that, this particular prefix worked over here. Okay, we are only extracting those matrices which we want from our event, and if we just see the dimensions over here now, okay, and we are only having those dimensions which we want over here as well. Okay, so this approach looks perfect. Now what you can do is, like, whenever you are planning to convert an event to a metric, you can just put this kind of searches as a safe search and just run with perfect schedule or proper schedule over there, so that every time the search run, it picks up those events and then convert it to metric and put it into a metric index over there. Okay, now apart from these things, there are certain other inputs as well of this particular mcollect command. Okay, let us discuss that one. Now you talk about spool. Okay, now this is very interesting one. So if I just go to spool documents over here, now spool is actually doing by default is the value is true over here. So this is actually doing the indexing part of the matrices over there. Okay, so if it is true, the data is getting basically written into this directory, Splunk home var spool Splunk. So if you have any data over there, so this particular data will be automatically indexed by Splunk, and once it's getting indexed, it will be automatically removed by Splunk as well. So you cannot see it, right? So currently, whenever we run our this code, it ran with spool equals to true, right? So whatever intermediate data it has created, basically it creates a CSV file. Okay, and that's why this particular data is getting indexed to our particular metric index over there. Okay, now whenever you basically mention spool equals to false, what happens? The data is not getting written to this in this particular directory. Instead, the data is getting written to this particular directory, var run Splunk. Okay, so let us go to that directory and stay over there. Maybe I'll just go to my Splunk home, var run Splunk. Okay, now let us see what happens when we run this particular particular search with spool equals to false. Okay, so if I just go over here, mention this spool equals to false, okay, and run it. So if you see in the job, if it is staying like emitted to this one, let's see first in our test matrices whether anything is getting indexed or not. So currently we have 5 matrices over here. Okay, if you see, we still have 5 matrices over here. We ran for all time, right? So that means those matrices did not get indexed in my metric index. Instead of that, Splunk has created one file over here, okay, which is, okay, current time is 11:38. So this is the file it has created over here. Okay, and if I just open the matrix, this file would have the same matrices but in a CSV format. If you see it over here, okay, with the metric timestamp, with different field names. If you see corp, name, okay, location, the metric name, and the value of the metric over here. Okay, if you see, like currently we are only fetching for the Q matrices, so that's why it has extracted those matrices as well over there. Okay, and the number of data is same, right? Because if I just see it over here in the mstats output previously, so there are total 15 events over here as we group by count, so that's why these counts are coming up for each and every matrices over there, right? So it is generating the same data, but it is not indexing into Splunk. Okay, now this particular data will be staying over here until unless you have some kind of automation work, which will basically, if you want to do something with this data, you need to have your own logic basically from here. Okay, so that's the part. Now there is an option as well to give it a better name of this particular file as well. Okay, if you just do not want this kind of names, so there is a input called file over here. So if I just go to mcollect documentation, so there is an input called file over here. Okay, so there you can basically give a file name as well. The default is basically there is a random number generator, or basically a particular variable which is having a random number and then underscore matrices.csv. That is what it has created over here as well. If you see, now there are another kinds of token over here called timestamp, so which you can use it as well. So let's say if I just give something like this one, file equals to, let's say I will give timestamp with the timestamp only. Okay, timestamp underscore matrices underscore demo.csv. Okay, let's say I wanted to create file name something like this one. Okay, so then if we just go over here in the var run Splunk directory, okay, so this would have created a file called this one, if you see it over here, with the same data, similar data. Okay, but the file name is different. Now that you can choose your own file name over there. Okay, but there are two tokens as I discussed. One is timestamp, another is random, which you can leverage as well while creating the file name over here. Okay, maybe this kind of scenario is helpful when we do not want to ingest the metric. You just wanted to create the metric data point from your event, maybe from this particular directory. You just wanted to send this metric to the any kind of third-party system or something like this one. Okay, so this kind of use cases maybe can be achieved using this particular spool equals to false and with a file name over there. Now apart from this inputs, there are three inputs left now. We talked about index, we talked about file, split, spool, prefix field as well. So there are three inputs as well: host, source, and the source type. Okay, so when you are ingesting into the metric index, you can basically change the host, source, and source type as well. Okay, so if I just run this mstats command by host, so currently it has taken the default host of value of my system, right? So let's say I just run with this one. So I'll just remove the spool because I wanted to index the data again. I'll say host equals to, let's say, seed. Okay, so if I just run this command again, so this will ingest the same matrices again, but it will be changing the host value. Okay, so we'll be seeing another row over here once I run this mstat command over here, if you see. Okay, so that means you can change the host. Similarly, if I just give the source over here, the source is basically the file. As I said, in the var spool Splunk directory, it creates a CSV file, right? So that file name basically it acts as a source. So if you just want to give your own source value, you can give that input as source equals to something over here as well. Okay, which I am not doing it now. It's very straightforward. Okay, so that you can do as well. Now regarding the source type, that is one important stuff. Let me show you over here the source type. Okay, if you see the current source type, it has basically set it as mcollect underscore stash. Okay,
Now, if you remember from my summary index video, when we push the event data into the summary index, it does not go for the licensing. You basically do not use the license over here because the source type it has created is something like stash, right? Similar concept over here as well. Okay, so whenever you are pushing some event data or converting some event data into matrices and push it to the metric index, it does not use basically any license over there because it has created this source type called mcollect_stash. Now, if you change this particular source type by using this particular input source type, okay, instead of giving mcollect_stash, you give some custom name over here, then maybe you will be using your license over here. So you have to be very careful on this part over here. Okay, so that stuff. And I think whenever this is important over here, like whenever you are upgrading to version 8 in Splunk, okay, in the limits.conf there is a stanza called mcollect, and there is a key called always use single value output that you need to make it as false. Okay, so that it will basically extract the data, basically extract the multiple matrices from your metadata point. So if I just show you the file over here, the limits.conf, it looks something like this one, mcollect. Basically you need to create the local version of the limit.conf and just make it as false over here. Okay, and another stuff I think, for this particular command to work properly, you need to have a index which is basically present in the search head. Okay, until unless you are forwarding the to indexer level. Like sometimes, like most of the times, we forward the search head data to indexer as well, right? So that means if you have that particular setup, then maybe your index can be present in the indexer layer, and you can run in this particular search in your searcher so that the data will be getting pushed to the indexer layer. Okay, and maybe in the searcher level you may need to have the index definition as well. I did not try this one in a cluster environment. Maybe if you have the cluster environment and try this one, and just let me know how it goes over there. Okay, so this is all we need to know about how we can convert a log data into a metric data point and push it to the metric index over there. Okay, in future videos we'll talk more about some other features in the Splunk of Splunk matrices over there. Okay, so hopefully this video was helpful. See you in next video.